As Bo Jackson became a phenomenon in the late 80s, becoming the greatest two-sport athlete this country has ever seen, he proved himself even further by becoming an MLB All-Star in 1989 with the Kansas City Royals, then making the Pro Bowl with the Los Angeles Raiders a year later. So let's look at how he got there, and the unfortunate reason it all came to an end.
Totally sports-esque. Major League.
From the beginning, it was more than obvious that Bo Jackson was a natural athlete and a simple freak of nature. In his senior year of high school, he rushed for 1,175 yards, then hit 20 home runs in 25 games, while winning the decathlon for the second time, winning by so much that he didn't have to compete in the 1,500 meters, saying that he hated running distance, which proves that me and Bo Jackson are just alike. Bo was drafted by the New York Yankees in the second round out of high school in 1982, and all it took for the Yankees to consider him was watching him take batting practice once. More specifically, just one pitch, in which he destroyed the batting cage, and that was all the Yankee scout needed to see. But he chose to go to Auburn on a football scholarship, as he promised his mother that he would be the first in his family to go to a major college. And Auburn was where he began to become a household name. His iconic moment of his college career came in his freshman year with the play that became known as Bo Over the Top. In his Iron Bowl debut, with 2:26 left in the game, Bo convinced Pat Dye to let him attempt to go over the top of the offensive and defensive lines on 4th down at the 1. And using his high jump and athletic abilities, he did just that, as he went over the top to help Auburn top Alabama. Bo would make the All-SEC team that year and the following year, and after an injury-shortened year, 1985 would be historic. He had 278 rushing attempts, rushing for 1,786 yards, 6.4 per carry, and scoring an SEC-leading 17 touchdowns. And in what is considered the closest vote in history, Bo Jackson took the Heisman Trophy home over Iowa quarterback Chuck Long. And in a college football career that saw him go for 4,575 all-purpose yards and 45 touchdowns, he was also a top track and field athlete, and as you may guess, he also played baseball. He didn't play in 1984 due to injury, but in the 68 games he played in 83 and 85, he hit 21 home runs while hitting .340 with a 1.161 OPS. He didn't play his entire senior season, and there's a reason for that. The biggest debate of 1986, besides if video games had peaked with The Legend of Zelda, was if Bo Jackson was going to play baseball or football, and that was answered after an incident in April. Tampa Bay Buccaneers owner Hugh Culverhouse and his agent Freeland Abbott told Bo he was cleared by the NCAA and the SEC to take a private jet to visit the Buccaneers for a physical. But when Jackson returned to Auburn for a game that night, he found out that he was in fact not cleared. He lost the remainder of his eligibility and became furious with Culverhouse, insisting that he would never play for Tampa Bay even if they drafted him first, feeling that they intentionally tried to sabotage his baseball career so he would pivot towards football. And he was a man of his word, as despite being picked first, he turned down a 5-year, $7.6 million contract. And with this, he turned towards baseball, and he was in good hands after getting drafted by the defending World Series champion Kansas City Royals in the 4th round. He signed a 3-year, $1 million contract and played 53 games with the Memphis Chicks in 1986, hitting 7 home runs before making his Major League debut in September of that year. And 1987 would be his first full year in the majors. On the night of April 28th, as he wasn't present at the NFL draft, he went 0 for 1 with 2 walks, but he was hitting .339 with a .986 OPS. And the next day, he would be surprised to find out that he was drafted in the 7th round by the Los Angeles Raiders. He initially had no intention to sign so he can focus only on baseball, but Al Davis helped him change his mind by telling him he would be able to play the entire baseball season before reporting to the Raiders. And for even more assurance, he would receive the highest salary of any non-NFL quarterback in NFL history, and a $500,000 signing bonus. And with this, the two-way Bo era began. Bo struggled after his hot start in May, ending the year hitting .235 with a .750 OPS while hitting 22 home runs. And most notable is his 158 strikeouts in 116 games, which would be a major mark on his career. And as the Royals finished second in the AL West, Bo was cleared to start his NFL career. He missed the first 6 games of the Raiders season, but was able to play the final 7. And the most notable was his Week 12 matchup against the Seahawks on Monday Night Football. Linebacker Brian Bosworth promised to contain Jackson, and these were his famous final words, as Jackson proceeded to run over Bosworth at the goal line for one of his 3 touchdowns, as he rushed for 221 yards, a single-game record for the Raiders at the time. And in his 7-game rookie season, he rushed for 554 yards at 79.1 per game, scoring 4 rushing touchdowns while recording his career high in receiving yards at 136 with 2 additional receiving touchdowns, good enough to finish second in Offensive Rookie of the Year voting to Troy Stratford, who played 5 more games than him. And as he would go back to the baseball field, his 1988 season would be similar to 1987. He was hitting .308 through the first 2 months of the season with an .864 OPS and 9 home runs. He had a better chance to make the All-Star team than he did the year prior at this point, but a torn hamstring would put him on the DL for all of June. And when he came back, he went into a slump, hitting 168 in June and hitting 205 in the second half, to bring his season total to 246 with a 758 OPS as he hit 25 home runs, striking out 146 times. And as the Royals finished third in the AL West, he returned to the football field to play in the Raiders' final 10 games. And he regressed some from his rookie season, going for 580 yards at 58 per game, while scoring 3 rushing touchdowns. But as this year came to an end, that brought along 1989. Jackson was obviously already well known in the sports world, but this year cemented Jackson as a big part of pop culture. The first big move was the release of Techmo Bowl on the NES in February of 1989. Already an arcade game, simply put, Bo Jackson was unstoppable in this game, meaning putting the difficulty level on easy in any modern game would not be enough to replicate playing with Bo Jackson in this game. He was a cheat code causing rage amongst those who weren't aware. And as streamers began playing the game and finding out this one simple trick, Bo went back to baseball, and he got off to another hot start, hitting 12 home runs to May, which was the most in his career to that point, while he was also slugging .530. And the difference between this year and the previous ones is he continued with his hot streak after May with no injuries, hitting an additional 6 home runs with an 817 OPS. And after hitting 3 home runs to start July, that brought his first half stats to a 263 average with an 829 OPS and 21 home runs. And for the first time in his career, Bo Jackson made the All-Star team. And at the 1989 All-Star Game in Anaheim, Bo Jackson's baseball career hit its peak. With the lineup that featured 4 eventual Hall of Famers and Mark McGwire, Bo Jackson was leading off, which was a shock to him, as he said he had never let off in his entire life. And after making a running catch to end the inning and prevent further damage given up by Dave Stewart, he had his chance. After taking a pitch from sinker baller Rick Russell, he golfed the next pitch 448 feet to center, becoming the 5th to ever lead off the All-Star game with a home run. And more history was made when Wade Boggs followed him with a game-tying home run, marking the first time 2 All-Star teammates led off the first with home runs. And as the inning ended and things went to a commercial break, Bo hit his peak as a cultural figure as a famous Bo Knows commercial aired for the first time. The commercial, set to the music of Bo Diddley, featured athletes across numerous sports, letting us know that Bo in fact does know about more than just baseball and football, though hockey was a bit too far. The commercial was actually supposed to air after the 4th inning, but given the timing of Bo's home run, Nike scrambled to get the commercial on air as quick as they could. And while we now live in a time of Nike completely dominating the market, in this time Nike was still behind Reebok even after the success of the Michael Jordan and Just Do It campaigns. But the excitement of the Bo Knows campaign shot the company to the top spot, where it never left, with Nike going on to own 80% of the cross-training shoe market thanks in main part to Bo's home run and convenient timing. And past the first inning home run, Jackson would drive in the go-ahead run for the AL on a potential double play that he beat out. He then went on to steal second base, making just the second player after Willie Mays to hit a home run and steal a base in an All-Star game, in which he went 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs, good enough to win All-Star MVP. He was on top of the sports world at the halfway point of 1989, and that would continue for the rest of the year. His numbers would drop some in the second half, but he still finished with over 30 home runs and 100 RBIs, good enough for a 10th place finish in MVP voting. And his league-leading 172 strikeouts placed him 10th all-time amongst right-handed hitters at the time. But what made his strikeouts cooler than anyone else was there was a chance he might break his bat over his head. And even in a 92-win season, the Royals again finished second in the AL West. So Bo went back to his football hobby and had the best season of his career. He joined the Raiders in Week 6, and in the 3 games in Week 8 through 10 against Washington, the Bengals, and the Chargers, he rushed for over 100 yards in each game. And he ended the year with a career-high 950 rushing yards at 86.4 per game. And despite the incredible year that's home finished 4th in yards per game, he did not make the Pro Bowl, something that is a very difficult task considering he played 4 to 5 games less than everyone else. Unfortunately, meaning he didn't make the Pro Bowl and the All-Star team in the same year. But that doesn't mean he wasn't deserving. And with this, he went back to Kansas City to statistically have his best season. His first half wasn't as good as the year prior, though it's very comparable, and it did not result in his second All-Star appearance. And the difference between this year and the years prior is Bo had a strong second half. Granted, he did miss all of August, but he hit 12 home runs with a 957 OPS in his final 35 games, resulting in his 3rd straight 25-plus home run season and a career high in on-base percentage, slugging, OPS, and WAR. Obviously, All-Star appearances are determined by first halves and a number of factors out of players' control, but 1990 was his best overall season, and 1989 saw him make the All-Star team in one sport and not the other, though he deserved both. And well, 1990 saw the same thing. And just like in 1989, Bo once again rushed for 100 yards in 3 straight games, in his Week 12 through 14 matchups against the Broncos, Lions, and Bengals. A strong finish to a 10-game season that saw him rush for 698 yards at 69.8 per game, with a career-high 5 rushing touchdowns. Good enough to make the Pro Bowl, making him the first and still the only athlete to make the All-Star teams in multiple major American sports leagues. And he arguably could have done it both in both 1989 and 1990. And after 4 seasons in the NFL and MLB, he was finally going to get a chance to play in the postseason, as though the Royals couldn't win the AL West, the Raiders could win the AFC West. After going 12-4 with 7 of those wins and their final 5 coming with Bo on the team. And his chance came on January 13th against the Bengals. And just like he had done in the regular season, he was dominating the Bengals. And Bengals fans rolled their eyes again when Bo took off for another huge gain. This one at 34 yards and what looked to be a routine end to the play. That is until Bo got up, after popping his hip back into his socket, and as he would say himself, felt the worst pain in his life. He was taken out of the game and would not return for the remainder of the season, as the Raiders would lose to the Bills in the AFC Championship. And in the aftermath, it was thought that Bo was dealing with a hip pointer, and as he did not get the treatment he needed, it was discovered that it was much worse than that. That discovery came in March when Bo limped his way into the Royal Spring Training Facility, where it was discovered that the issue was much worse, as Bo developed a condition known as avascular necrosis, which would deteriorate the cartilage and bone around his hip joint. That would eventually have to be replaced. And with this, it was obvious his football career was over, and after his hip did not respond to the treatment, he was released by the Royals. A shocking turn of events for someone who seemed so invincible. But it wasn't all over for Bo, as he was picked up by the White Sox on a 3-year deal, playing 23 games with them in 1991. And as the joint continued to deteriorate, he underwent a hip replacement, causing him to miss the entire 1992 season. But he wasn't done yet, as he made his return in the White Sox 4th game in the 1993 season, and hit a pinch-hit home run in his first at-bat. He would go on to play 85 games that year, dealing with some health issues, and ultimately had his weakest season, hitting .232 with a .722 OPS and 106 strikeouts. Despite this, he did get his chance to play in the MLB postseason, as he was finally on a team that won the AL West. The White Sox would play the Blue Jays, and Bo would play all 3 games in Toronto, scoring 1 run, but not recording any hits, as the White Sox lost in 6 games. He would be released by the White Sox after the season, and was picked up by the California Angels. And he surprisingly had a good season with all things considered. In 75 games, he hit 13 home runs with an .851 OPS and a career-high .279 batting average. The most notable is that he only struck out 72 times, making this the only season where he averaged less than 1 strikeout a game. And the reason he only played 75 games is not the result of an injury, but rather the 1994 player strike, causing the season to end abruptly. And with this, he decided that the shortened 1994 season would be his final year. Around the same time the wildly successful Bo Knows campaign came to an end. He did all this quietly, a perfect representation of his humble nature. To see how much of an effect Bo Jackson had, then you can look at the fact that he had such a short professional career. To have just 4 years of professional football and be regarded as one of the best and most impactful players the game has seen tells you all you need to know. And the biggest reason those 4 years left such an impact is the fact that he was also playing baseball at the highest level for all those years. He wasn't the first to do such a thing, but he was the first to be an all-star in both sports, and he probably should be the only one to make multiple all-star teams in both sports. And that's one of the many what-if questions regarding Bo's career, such as what if he only played baseball, or if he only played football. But none was bigger than what if he never got hurt, or if he played in the modern day to receive the modern medicine that would allow him to recover in time. We'll never know, but that short period where Bo Jackson became an all-star in both sports and became a part of pop culture big enough to have an impact on the biggest sports brand in the world comparable to Michael Jordan is enough to consider him perhaps the greatest athlete the country has ever seen. And if you feel that playing a team sport isn't enough to prove Jackson's case, consider he was a dominant track athlete at the same time he was playing college football and baseball, and who knows what he would have accomplished if he focused entirely on track and field, considering his claims that he ran an unofficial 3.9-second 40-yard dash, one of the few people who you'd believe if he told you that. And it's not a stretch to say we may never see someone like Bo Jackson again. There's many recent athletes who are very capable of playing these 2 sports at the highest level, with the most recent being Drew Hansen, but not one multi-sport athlete was as impactful as Bo, with his biggest competition now being Mookie Betts.
Fielder Mookie Betts on the precipice of perfection. 300 game for Mookie Betts.